So without further ado, please help me welcome Tanis Roeder.
I remember the day that I learned to use my words as a weapon as vividly as I remember my first kiss. I was in elementary school and was just coming out of the lunch line. I had my tray in my hands with what I guess you could call food on it, and a small cardboard milk carton in the upper right-hand corner. As I turned to walk into the cafeteria, I looked up, and there she was. The girl who had spent the last few years tormenting me, almost on a daily basis. She was a year older than I was, she was popular, and she seemed to get true satisfaction out of picking on me, especially when it made me cry. She had a mean smirk on her face, and she took one look down at my tray and looked me in the eyes and said the words I will never forget. One day, I hope your face is on a milk carton. Implying that one day she hoped I would be a missing child. I had had enough. I was so full of anger, and it didn't take but a second for me to reply without thinking, well, at least I have a dad who loves me. Brutal, I know. I knew that her father wasn't a part of her life, so I knew how much those words would burn if I ever had the courage to say them. As I stood there, I wasn't sure if she was going to punch me in the face or what was going to happen next, but her eyes started to well up with tears, and she ran from the lunchroom. I walked with my tray over to the corner. I had a seat. And I thought to myself, wow, I really thought that once I fired those words at her, I would feel better. I would feel triumphant, like somehow I had gotten even with her. But that's not at all how I felt in that moment. I felt shame and disappointment in myself. I'm guessing that many of you can think of a time in your life when you said words that you immediately wished you could take back. Maybe you said those words to your spouse, a family member, a coworker, maybe even one of your really good friends. I want you to take just a second and think about how you felt in that moment after those words came out that you wished you wouldn't have said. I'm guessing that you felt the negativity of those words as soon as they rolled off your tongue, and you immediately wished that you could take them back. The negativity might have lingered within you even longer than it did within the other person. I spent many years regretting that day in the lunchroom. In fact, I even asked that girl for forgiveness a few years later. She brushed it off as if she didn't remember it, but her body language told me loud and clear that she did. I realized just how powerful words are, and the fact that I don't want my words to cause scars. I want my words to be positive and encouraging. Now, I am not saying that this is easy, nor am I saying that I personally have perfected the skill of only speaking positive and encouraging words. No, but it's something that I constantly work on, and it has changed the way that I communicate with my friends and my foes. It took me a while, but I forgave myself for that day in the lunchroom. However, the lesson that I learned is something that I think about daily. Fast forward many years, it was an unusually warm October day, and I had just arrived at a dear friend's house for a going-away party. This, however, was not your typical going-away party. You see, we were throwing a party for a dear friend of mine, Pat Markham Young II. Pat was my 4-H leader, my dance instructor. He was one of my good friends and my mentors. He is someone who had always encouraged and loved me, and he did that for all of his 4-H kids. I was carrying things into the house when I on the front door. Now, at first glance, this sign was a little bit strange, but I reminded myself that I shouldn't be surprised about anything surrounding Pat, because he had always been someone who marched to the beat of his own drum. And that's one of the things that I loved most about him. You see, this sign had a picture of a cartoon vampire with a big red circle around it and a line through it. And it simply read, "No vampires." I wasn't sure what this meant. Yes, I know it was kind of strange. So I brushed it off and I went inside. As I was helping to set up things, one of his family members came over to me and said, Tanis, did you see the sign on the door?" I said, "Yes, I saw the sign," and I asked her what it was all about. And the response that I got was not the response that I expected. She told me that they put the sign there as a reminder that no one is allowed into the house, this day or any day for that matter, who is going to say something negative or discouraging to Pat. As I mentioned, this wasn't your typical going-away party. Pat had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and he had decided that if cancer was going to take him from this earth, he didn't want his funeral to be his last party. He wanted a going-away party that he could be at. So people were coming from near and far, and his family wanted that sign there because lots of folks had been coming to visit Pat, and they had been telling stories about family members and coworkers who had also struggled through cancer. Some of them lived, and some of them did not. What these people didn't realize is that those stories were not helping Pat in his fight. He needed to be filled with positive and encouraging words. The image of the vampire was a reminder that in a sense, our words have the power to draw blood and suck the life out of people. And that is not what Pat needed at that moment, or any moment for that matter. Over the next few months, the image of the vampire stayed in my mind, and every time I talked with Pat on the phone or visited with Pat in person, I was very careful to choose my words wisely. We had many amazing conversations about life and death, his struggles and his triumphs, and before I ever opened my mouth to respond, I would always take a few seconds to pause and think about what I was going to say. Now, it's not that I ever would have purposely discouraged him. I just knew how important my words were. And this was not always easy. In fact, there was one conversation in particular where it was really difficult. Pat and I were sitting in his living room, just having a normal conversation, and out of nowhere he looked at me and he said, "Tanis, I'm afraid that people are going to forget me. I'm afraid that once I'm gone, you're going to forget all about me." What do you say to that? I took an unusually long pause to compose myself, and then I responded the best way I knew how, from my heart. I said, "Pat, you have been such an amazing part of so many people's lives. You don't forget someone who's been a part of your life. Just think of all the memories we have of state fairs and dance competitions and 4-H events. It seems like just yesterday you were telling me that you met the love of your life and couldn't wait to get married. And then you told me you were going to be a daddy for the first time and the second time. We have so many amazing memories. I will never, ever forget you." Pat sat there and looked at the floor with his lips pursed, and I could tell he needed something more, but I didn't know what else I could say or do in that moment. And then I noticed that Pat's pursed lips began to turn into a sly little smile. He had come up with something. He said, "Tanis, you know I love whiskey." Yes, of course I knew he loved whiskey. Where is he going with this? He He continued, "Every year, I want you to take a shot of whiskey in my memory." At first, I thought he was joking, because there is nothing on this planet that I hate more than whiskey. Even the smell, oh, disgusting, disgusting. But then I looked at him and realized that he wasn't joking. He was serious. This is what he needed in that moment. So I promised him, if you go before me, I promise you I will take a shot of whiskey every year in your memory. It wasn't until after Pat passed away in September of 2011, nearly a year after his going away party, that I realized what a special gift he and his family had unknowingly given me. They taught me how to pause, how to just stop talking, how to choose my words before I let them roll off my tongue. My experience in elementary school had taught me to never use my words as a weapon. And now my experience with Pat had really taught me how powerful those words were and how careful I need to be with them. With these lessons learned and a whole new perspective on just how precious life is and the fact that tomorrow is never guaranteed, I decided that now was the time to start to make my dreams happen. I had always wanted to own my own business and become a professional speaker. However, I was so full of doubt. Was I good enough? Did I have enough experience? Right? You've never doubted yourself like that, have you? We are all full of doubt. Now, whenever I had my internal dialogue going on, it would be myself building myself up, and then I would tear myself down. Oh, you can do this. No, you can't. Yes, you can. No, you can't. Right? This internal dialogue that goes on. And that was pretty much a daily occurrence at this point. I would always call the same person when this would start to happen. My dad. My dad has absolutely been my rock. Through my ups and my downs in life, he's kind of like Roeder. He always has something very wise to say. I remember one day when I was this close to quitting my job, but I had a list of 15 reasons why I shouldn't. I called my dad and I said, "Dad, I really, really want to take this next step, but I'm scared." He got really quiet on the phone before he responded. And then he said, "Tanis, you can do anything you put your mind to. You have been thinking about and planning this for so long that if you would spend that much time and energy actually doing it, there's no way in the world you're going to fail." At that moment, I took a pause of my own because I realized that my dad had just used a positive pause on me. I guarantee you that he is just as concerned about me being my own business owner and making enough money to support myself. But in that moment, he made a choice to give me something that I could not give myself. Positive words of encouragement. I know that all of you have done for someone what my dad did for me that day. After that conversation, I wrote my letter of resignation, and I called my designer to say, it's finally time to design my own logo for my company. So many amazing things have happened, and it's not that there hasn't been bumps in the road, because there has. But I know that if I take the time to pause and to ensure that the words that come out of my mouth or the words that I think in my head are positive and encouraging, I can do anything I set my mind to. And I can also encourage those around me to do the same. My challenge to each of you here today is to take the time to pause. When you are communicating with others, whether it's your family, your coworkers, your spouse, your children, Just take the time to stop and think about the words that are going to come out of your mouth. The great news is that I don't have 5 steps or 10 steps in order for you to learn how to do this, because you already know how to do this. Just take the time to do it. How great would it be to never have to regret something that you said, or never have to go back and ask for forgiveness because you just let the words roll off your tongue? How much weight would be lifted if you got a phone call tomorrow that told you someone you love is no longer with us, and you knew in your heart the last words you said to them were positive and encouraging? How would your life be different if you simply took the time to pause when you were communicating with your family and your friends and your coworkers? Would it make your heart skip a beat if you knew that because you chose your words wisely, you inspired someone? You can all experience the power of pause. All you have to do is take the time to unlock it.